This might be a long one. Diego Sanchez. So Diego Sanchez was due to fight this weekend. He had a fighter meeting with his coach. So before every UFC card, the commentators like to meet with the fighters to go through a few things, get their perspective on their opponent, ask them some questions around the fight, blah, 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 blah. You've probably seen the footage if you followed this story at all. But on Diego Sanchez's Instagram, he had posted a video of what happened in that fighter meeting. Now, before this was posted, it came out that Diego Sanchez was off the card for undisclosed reasons. 24 hours later, it then came out that Diego Sanchez and the UFC had parted company after 15 years or 16 years together and 31 fights in total. We didn't know why. We then saw what Diego posted on his Instagram, and we found out why. Basically, during that fighter meeting, Diego Sanchez and his coach, Josh Fabia, and I should say this isn't really massively Diego, it was more his coach, hijacked the meeting and basically told the commentators what they can and can't say about Diego and what he was and wasn't happy about, what the previous commentators, Daniel Cormier, for example, said about him in a prior fight. To explain how wrong that is would take quite a long time, but the UFC sells a product. The commentators call it like they see it. They do not have an agenda. If they have an agenda, that's up to them. But from an outside perspective, I haven't watched a single one of Diego's fights and gone, oh, the commentators were a little bit harsh there. Joshua Fabia took it upon himself because he wasn't happy about what they said, which reflects badly on him, to hijack that fighter meeting and basically sit there and tell the commentators what they can and can't say about Diego Sanchez. Well, Diego Sanchez is sitting or standing 2 feet away from him, pretty much saying nothing. It is really concerning to see a legend like Diego Sanchez, and he is a legend of the sport. He was the very first Ultimate Fighter winner. Everyone remembers that night for Griffin versus Bonner, but the first Ultimate Fighter finale, because it was 2 different weight classes, was Diego Sanchez. He won on that night, and he became the very first Ultimate Fighter. He has gone on to have 31 fights with the UFC. The record of those fights, well, they're a little bit up and down. He's been in the organisation 16 years. He has everyone's respect in this organisation. Josh Fabia has no one's respect in this organisation. And in fairness, no one knew who Josh Fabia was, really, until he started managing Diego Sanchez. And no one slagged off Josh Fabia until he started behaving like a child. He confronted Matt Serra back at Fight Island earlier on in the year, /last year, whenever it was, and basically had a go at Matt Serra. And if you watch the footage, the conversation is almost about nothing. And now we've seen this. He actually had a thing with Ariel Helwani as well, where he went on Ariel's show and didn't like what Ariel asked him, and then he was sending Ariel a load of messages. And now he's got Diego Sanchez, and he's going through this. The way this apparently came about is they went in that fighter meeting and did that. They then released a conversation, and this is the weird thing about this. They released that footage, which made Joshua Fabia and Diego Sanchez look bad. Not a single person thought they looked good. They looked bad. Then they released a private phone call with Hunter Campbell, the UFC's lawyer, basically saying, and the whole premise of the phone call was Josh Fabia trying to be clever, get all of Diego Sanchez's medical records so that they could try and sue the UFC. That's why he was doing that, and it was painfully obvious. And when you're calling a lawyer, and you're asking a lawyer, and not just any lawyer, a lawyer for a gigantic corporation for someone's medical records, what do you think he's going to do? So Hunter lawyered Josh Fabia. He said, if you have concerns about Diego's well-being and health, I will not put him in that cage. I will literally pay you out for his fight. I will pull him from the card. I'll pay you his show money and his win money, and I will release him from the UFC because I do not want to have a fighter go in the cage who does not think that he's ready to go in the cage. So that backfired on Josh Fabia instantly, because he effectively got Diego released from the UFC and didn't get to fight his final fight on his contract. Whether or not Diego thinks that's what happened, that's what happened. And we only know that's what happened because Josh Fabia released the footage. He released the footage. So it's not like this is up for debate. It's not like we can have a conversation about who said what and who didn't. We know who said what because they released the footage, and it doesn't make them look good. So I looked into Josh Fabia only a little bit because there's not too much good stuff to tell. I'm going to premise this rant with this. Look, I don't know the guy, and I understand that he has built a business. Regardless of what I think of that business, he's built a business and he wants to protect it. And that's probably his only way of making money, and that's his only source of income. I don't know if he's got a family or he doesn't. Has a family or doesn't. But, so I don't want to go too hard on him. I've seen footage of the sort of teachings that he does. There's a load of guys pretending to have knives running around a cage, and he's teaching them how to dive and dodge out of the way, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. If someone's got a knife, you run away. If they're in a room and the door's closed, chances are you're not going to be able to dodge them for long. So you better figure something else out. Anyway, there's this footage of some of his teachings and him moving away from bags and doing these techniques, and it just looks trash on fire. It looks bad. And Diego, it almost feels like he's almost being controlled by this person. This person's entered his life and is kind of controlling him or telling him what he should and shouldn't do. You know, Diego was just sitting there in that fighter meeting, letting Josh Fabia go out to business on his own, go into business for himself, basically saying, you're making me look bad, you're making my business look bad, that's not what Diego looks like or how he fights and blah, blah, blah. He's just in it for himself. And it's really terrible to see someone like Diego fall through the cracks and fall into this person's control, or what appears to be control, and he looks so helpless with it, and he believes it. And he recently posted something that was just unbelievable. Let me just pull it up quickly, because this was ridiculous. He posted something: Diego Sanchez fears UFC will kill him for speaking out against the promotion. He put this on his Instagram or his Twitter. He was crying into the camera on his Instagram about how he thinks the UFC are going to kill him the next time he starts his truck. Like, what is happening? What is happening to Diego Sanchez? I feel like it's a cry for help. Like, someone needs to get him away from this Josh Fabia guy and kind of hit the reset button with his life and where he's up to. And look, if those things that Josh Fabia does and the teachings that he does makes Diego feel better and makes Diego perform better, regardless of whether or not I think they're fugazi or not, then that's good for Diego. If it has a placebo effect on him, then that's great. But what this has done, and all the time that it was going on and Diego was winning a fight and losing a fight, and I know he had, in his last 4 fights, he's 2-2 since he's been with this Fabia guy, and one of them was a DQ to an illegal knee that he ended up winning, so he's probably really 3-1. But if what this guy is doing with Diego is having positive effects, then that's fine. But the most recent spate of what we've seen has been overall negative by a country mile. You know, he has lost his job effectively from the UFC. He's gone out with a whimper instead of going out in a blaze of glory. He attempted to let this random guy who is a self-awareness coach launch a legal assault on the UFC. He then released a load of footage basically showing the UFC in a good light and them in a bad light. He's been crying on his Instagram about how he thinks the UFC is going to kill him. None of this at all is something that's done by someone who is mentally stable or is happy with the way things are going at the moment. I'm genuinely worried about Diego Sanchez. I do not like this person that he's let into his life. The whole thing stinks to me, and people that are perhaps close to Diego Sanchez need to do something and get involved. Family, friends, former training partners, whatever it might be, because what we're seeing at the moment is ugly, and someone really needs to step in and help Diego Sanchez out. And this Joshua Fabia guy, and you can all look into him as much as you want, and I do understand that he's a person attempting to make a living, but everything that I can see, this guy is bad news for Diego Sanchez.